have a bit of like a workhorse mentality where I'll literally just keep going and can have some issues around guilt for taking time off. I remember during the pandemic seeing a lot of messaging just from the culture itself to be like, use your time wisely, be productive with this time. So it's like, well, on one hand, we're going through a global trauma. And on the other hand, we're supposed to like capitalize on this in some way. And it's difficult and it's a lot. I've had to really try to limit my exposure in a lot of ways to social media because I'm so sensitive to that. And I've had to retrain myself around what do I want my work week to look like and what's sustainable. That's where my elder self work has been really helpful. It's helpful to think of yourself, as a 90-year-old looking back on me right now, what would I want from me? Does the 90-year-old me wish I had worked harder? Probably not. I feel like I'm working hard enough.
Well, hello there and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. Now, I wonder if any of you during the pandemic started looking for teachers online. From jumping on a trampoline teacher, that's what I found, to yoga teachers, to anything and everything, because many of us couldn't go to the gym. And so as much as I was resistant for the first couple of weeks, I was like, well, they say it's going to end, but then of course it didn't end. So I was like, well, I need to start working out. Anyway, one person who I found at that time was Yoga with Kassandra, because she's got this amazing YouTube channel. There's so many, I think, I don't even know, over 700 free yoga videos of all lengths. And the reason why I liked her stuff is that my main workout was something else, but I loved her 10-minute videos, right? Just a 10-minute morning class made life so much easier, made it so much easier for me to do it. And so that's who I'm talking to today, which is super exciting. So she's been doing this since 2014 on YouTube. She's also an author. And really, she's just kind of on a mission to help people feel great with yoga. Like that's really her whole trip. She had a journal and a card deck come out this past January. So we talk about all the things, all the yoga things, all the feeling good things in this interview. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I really did enjoy interviewing Kassandra Reinhardt. Well, hello. I am super excited to welcome Kassandra Reinhardt to the Terri Cole Show. Hey, Kassandra.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. This is so exciting. One of my favorite things, yoga. But you're involved with so much more than yoga. So just do me a favor. Tell me how you started, because you've actually been in the long game. Like you've been doing virtual yoga for a really long time. Like you were an early adapter before the pandemic. So tell me how you got into this as your life's work.
Yeah, I started this in 2014. So in April, I guess, in a month, it'll be 9 years now of me being on YouTube and being an online yoga instructor. Before it was more widely known and understood and accepted and easier. I think in 2014, there weren't a whole lot of resources or tutorials and programs and blog posts and videos, telling people how to teach online and bring their businesses online. It's crazy. It's only 9 years, but it really was a completely different landscape in terms of like online marketing and e-commerce and everything like that.
How many people do you have on your YouTube channel now?
2.1 million, almost 2.2.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And, you start off at zero. So I started in 2014. I had only been teaching yoga for about a year. I got certified, finished my first teacher training in 2013, I believe. And, I was really naive about the whole teaching online YouTube thing. I really was just doing it because I thought, well, if I put up a couple classes online when I'm applying for studio jobs, maybe that'll give me some kind of leg up, or I can give studios an idea of my teaching style. I had no idea people could earn a living online or anything like that. I was really kind of oblivious to what the potential was of being online as a teacher. Thankfully, I tried it, and thankfully, I caught on pretty quickly that there's actually a lot that can be done here. And I ended up just kind of throwing myself into it. But, it's slow and steady over the years. I was, 23 years old when I started my channel. I was working full time, and this was just something I was trying to build on the side some way or another, overworking for the most part until I ended up trying to find some kind of balance, but
Mm-hmm.
thankful I stuck with it. And here I am 9 years later in a totally different kind of environment where now online is really celebrated and
Yeah.
understood in a much better way. So it's been fun to see the evolution, really.
What I think is really amazing about your channel and about what you're doing is that you understand your audience. So you have like 10-minute morning classes, and there's something so accessible about, because even if I don't have time to do a whole class, I can do 10 minutes with you. You've got a stretch up there right now that is just, it just speaks to what we need as opposed to what we aspire to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. This idea of what you think you should be doing
Mm-hmm.
and what your practice should look like. I've always find, I know for me, I have to have a very difficult balance with discipline. Discipline can be phenomenal for me and very
Mm-hmm.
helpful, but it can very quickly switch over into being something that is now filled with expectation, with judgment. And then if I have too much of that, then I'm entering shame and guilt if I'm not meeting what I think I should be doing. So I love a good disciplined practice, but I also have to add a lot of grace and a lot of flexibility and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
freedom in it. Otherwise, it stops being healthy for me. And that's kind of where the 10-minute yoga comes from. You know, realistically, in my life, I was doing 10 to 20-minute practices every day,
Mm-hmm.
especially as I was working 2 jobs. Like that was the most realistic for my life. But
Right.
when you go to studios, studio classes are always about an hour long. And that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing and beautiful. It's not necessarily realistic for everyone, especially when you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking that you have to commute to and from the studio. Some people have to find babysitters. Like
Yep.
there's a big cost associated with it, a big time constraint. And I just thought, like, why am I not teaching the way I'm actually practicing? You know, why am I putting all this pressure on myself to do what I think other people want me to do or what I should be doing because it's what's always been done? So I just started doing 10-minute, 20-minute short
Mm-hmm.
practices, and I was blown away. It's really resonated with a lot of people for the same reason that it resonates with me. It's realistic, it's
Yep.
accessible, it's doable, it's easier to stick to. And you'd be surprised how much you can really do in those 10 minutes, you know, like you can get a lot in there.
Yes, you can. And consistency for me is queen, where it's like, it's not about it being an hour. It's about doing it consistently, doing something consistently, moving my body consistently. But I think there's some kind of inherent permission sort of granted when people go to your YouTube channel and go, oh, look, this is all a legit way of having yoga in my life because it's still adding value. It's still right. I'm still feeling good about doing it and moving, and I sometimes can do longer ones and do, but I just love the idea of giving us permission to do what we can do. And I'm sure it resonated, Kassandra, with so many people because it's what you were really doing. So the truth,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can really tell when a teaching is authentic. I don't know if you know Ashley Turner, but I remember taking a workshop
Yep.
from her years ago, and she was talking about her teacher and how he practices every single day, and he attributes his success to the fact that he practices every single day. And there's a lot to be said about that. Like I do feel like there's some kind of energy that you give off, and students, whether it's in person or even virtual, I don't think you can fake it. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
think it comes through in my teaching if I've been present and if I've been doing my own work and if I have not. And it can be really difficult. I know for a lot of teachers, once you start really like immersing yourself as a teacher and really focusing on now being someone who creates these classes for others and you're pouring all of
Mm-hmm.
your love and attention into your students, you might fall in that trap of neglecting yourself and your own
Right.
practice. It's a hard balance to find. But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have that authenticity and that integrity, what do you really have? You know, all the theoretical knowledge in the world is not going to make up for the embodied wisdom that you can only access from putting in the work. You know, I wish, like, I'm a very head in my head person, like a very analytical knowledge person. I would love to just be able to soak up theoretical knowledge and have that be enough.
Yep.
It's not. Unfortunately,
Nope.
it's not. There's no substitute for hours spent on the mat. And truly, like, this applies to anything that you do in life. You know,
Yep.
I wish we could just learn our way out of things, But we have this beautiful gift of embodiment. So we kind of got to use it.
We do. All right. So tell me about I know at the top of this year, you released a new journal and card deck. So My Yoga Journey is the journal. It's a guided journal. And then I Radiate Joy daily affirmation cards from Yoga with Kassandra. That's you. So tell us about your journal.
So the journal, again, is kind of born from this intention of making things really simple, really accessible, and not too time consuming. So I'm really inspired by the fact that people resonate so much with my classes. And I wanted to try to find some kind of tool that would help them take things maybe a little bit deeper. So beyond just a physical practice, to help them bring a little bit more integration into it without overcomplicating their lives in a way that was really manageable, really simple. And I journal every single day before I go to bed. And I've been doing that every single day for almost 5 years now. Wow. The only way I've been able to stick with that is that it takes less than 4 minutes to do every day. If it was more complicated, I know it wouldn't work for me. So the My Yoga Journey journal is really simple. You're just meant to take 2 minutes before your practice to write down how you're feeling, what your intention is, maybe choosing an affirmation you resonate with, go through your practice, and then at the end, take 2 minutes to reflect. What worked, what insights came up. There's different prompts every day to kind of keep things fresh. But that's it. It's super simple. 2 minutes before your practice, 2 minutes after, so that you have some kind of intention going into it and then some integration before you carry on through the rest of your day, just to really connect the dots, I guess, and to try to get to those deeper layers and to make the practice more meaningful overall without being overwhelming. And then the affirmation cards is because I always say, like, my first spiritual teacher was Louise Hay. She was kind of the first one to really introduce me to these like power thoughts and affirmations. And I really do have such a deep love and respect for her as my primary teacher. I'm really sad that I never got to meet her, in real life. She was really a wonderful force, but I gained so much from her affirmations. And I'm also a deep student of shadow work. And I find that affirmations can be a really wonderful tool for that. So I've kind of been known to use affirmations in my yoga classes. A lot of people know me for that and really enjoy it. And then it was just kind of this dream come true where I got the opportunity to make my own. So I absolutely jumped on that because I probably have dozens of oracle and tarot and affirmation decks already. So I just thought, yes, let's make our own, and kept it really simple, focused them around health instead of having 4 suits like you would have, swords and cups and all of that. We just did 4 facets of health. So they're affirmations for physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. So just a really nice tool either for your day or for your practice. But that was really like a pinch me fun project for me, a big full circle moment for sure.
That's so exciting. Yeah, I feel like Louise Hay has been influential for so many of us. I did actually get to meet her before she passed because I had an association with Hay House. And I just was like, wow, to think of what she did in her life and when she did it. And I had I'll share something quick about her. I had a pivotal moment with seeing her. I went to Toronto with one of my best friends and we went to see, and she was talking and she was like, how many people here feel like they're behind? 350 people put their hands up. How many people here feel like they should be further along in their careers or their lives or whatever? Everyone's like, me. And then she went on to say, I didn't start on a spiritual journey until I was in my 50s. I didn't establish Hay House until I was 64 or something. Like, whatever she said, she was like 80 something at the time. And she's like, and I just took up ballroom dancing. And it completely, profoundly impacted my lens through which I would see how far behind I was or ahead I was. I was like, maybe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like, in one of her books, she calls that creativity. She speaks to this being creativity. And we tend to think of creativity as being something that means artistic pursuit or artistic talent. But creativity is the act of actively creating your life. I love hobbies. I love trying new things. And like, that's probably why I resonated with Louise Hay so much, to be like, well, in my 40s, I'm someone. In my 50s, I'll be someone else. In my 60s, I'm only going to add to that. And I will continue to do that with each decade of my life. And I remember she's like, in my 80s, I became an avid gardener and grow all my own vegetables now. And it's such a empowering, inspiring way to think about life. Like, I'm 32 years old. To some people, that's kind of old. To some people, that's quite young. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about which perspective you're looking at it from. But I notice how many of my peers are really talking about our age as though we're so old. And it's so heartbreaking to me in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, I would like to live till 95. I'm not nowhere near ready to call it quits. I've only just gotten started.
Right.
It's really strange. I've noticed the messaging around millennials right now, and like how
Mm-hmm.
we're being viewed and how we're being talked about. And I'm thinking like, whoa, 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 I just got here. Like, I'm
Right.
just warming up. Like, we're not done. We're not done. We're just getting started. This is like the first real decade of adulthood. But it's interesting how differently people deal with aging.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've been talking a lot about aging, and I've been having different people on, and I'm people who are menopause experts and all these different things. Cause of course, wherever you are in your life is, for me, I'm the most interested in those things. Like, I want to hear. And I think that you're right, that the lens through which we see ourselves, that's everything, right? I could see myself anyway. It depends on, am I comparing myself to other people, or am I staying in my lane and like living my best life, meaning taking care of myself, having healthy relationships, being successful, or whatever it means to you. And I think that the collective interpretation of aging, a lot of that is really changing. I interviewed Paulina Peruskova not long ago on the show, and
Oh, I
she
love
was
her.
talking about, she has a book called Unfiltered. That was just so wonderful. She was so great. And really bringing up some, hard conversations. Like, you're screwed if you do and screwed if you don't, to a degree. But I think that one thing, sort of back to the yoga theme, that I love about yoga itself is that part of why I started getting into yoga at all is that I knew that eventually I couldn't do all the hard hitting. I wouldn't want to do all of the really like brutal stuff on my body that I'd been like running, and even Zumba was hurting my knees. Like, but I find that the strength and the kind of workout that yoga actually can be, depending on what you're looking for, because I could do restorative as well, is something that I could do forever. So you probably do you have people of all ages doing your work, I imagine?
Yeah, absolutely. This year, I've been really focused on doing this like inner elder work. I think a lot of people are familiar with inner child work, right? Like
Mm,
that's become a little bit more mainstream and something that we're valuing, and with rightly so. Like, it's very valuable. There's a lot to be learned and healed from inner child work. But I'm like, we're missing half the equation. Like, what about your inner elder, your future self, your eldest self? I find like I'm spending
mm,
a lot of time really trying to visualize and think about her, think of that me of the future. And it's affected my yoga practice quite a bit. I'm much more concerned now with mobility, and having
mhm.
mobility be my primary focus as I go through my 30s and hopefully get to enjoy my 40s, 50s, 60s, hopefully all the way into my 90s, hopefully with ease. I've been spending a lot of time looking at the people around me, looking at my elders, and really noticing the differences in the quality of life. And they kind of all bottle down to how mobile are you, right? So
Yep.
yoga can be amazing, and there's a lot that can be gained from more strenuous, vigorous, challenging yoga classes. If you have the
Hmm.
goal of mastering a handstand, go for it. Have fun. That's amazing. There can be great spiritual growth that comes from overcoming challenges and
Yep.
really seeing what you're made of.
Hmm.
But it doesn't have to always be that. There's so much to be gained with just making sure that you're maintaining your range of motion, so that you're thinking of your future self. Will I be able to bend over and tie my shoelaces? Will I be able
Yep.
to get in and out of bed? Will I be able to get in and out of the shower unassisted? Like, how
Yep.
can I make sure that my joints feel really good, and that I'm able
Hmm.
to preserve as much as my freedom and independence for as long as
Yeah.
possible? Like, that's really where I've been focusing a lot. And in my audience, The bulk of them, about 40% are around my age, 25 to
Hmm.
35. But I have
Hmm.
another solid 30% who are between 45 and 60. So an
Hmm.
older age group. And every year I'm noticing when I go through my YouTube analytics, I notice that the older age group, the percentage is growing slowly but
Mm.
surely. So it seems that more and more people are turning towards yoga and are embracing it as a non-threatening, non-scary practice. Because I think for a lot of times there was a lot of preconceived notions around yoga as being something that you
Right.
need to be super young and fit and able-bodied to do. And now we're loosening those strings a little bit, so more people are feeling called to try it. But I find that really encouraging. I find it really, really wonderful that this can be a tool that people maintain and continue to practice throughout the many phases of their lives, from early adulthood into older adulthood.
Absolutely. And there's a way that you can start. Go to Cassandra's YouTube channel. And if you want to start, if you want to learn, there's a whole variety of things for you there. I wanted to ask you a question about your experience during the pandemic, because I know you were already well established online at that point, but what shifted for you? Was there more people coming to your YouTube channel? Was there more people home working out? Did you see an influx of people?
Oh my gosh, did I ever? It was a crazy time. A few kind of things happened at the same time. So in 2020, I tripled my subscriber count, tripled. Nothing like that had ever, ever, ever happened before. It was intense, an intense jump. Most years, not all years, but often I do a 30-day challenge in April. So it's one yoga
Mhm.
class a day every day for 30 days. And the first time I did that was in April of 2020. I had already been planning this since the November previous. So before the pandemic, I had
Right.
already had all these classes recorded and edited, everything ready to go. But I kind of had this great timing, quote unquote. It was great for me professionally. It was horrible personally to, be in
Right.
lockdown. But all of a sudden, the world went into lockdown. People were at home. And at the same time, I was introducing my morning yoga challenge, which was 10 minutes of morning yoga every day for 30 days. There was a lot of synchronicity with me being very well placed and prepared completely unintentionally. I never would have been able to predict this pandemic and this lockdown. But I
Right.
saw a huge boom in 2020. And what was really interesting is that it wasn't that it was only people whose studios were closed and now they were turning online for their classes. We saw some of that, but for the most part, we were seeing an influx of people who had never even concentrated or contemplated on yoga before, never given it a
Right.
try, never thought it would be for them. But all of a sudden, they're at home, they're kind of losing their minds a little bit, and they're willing to try whatever they can to try to find some kind of internal peace. So I saw a lot of men. My audience has almost always been predominantly female. It was like 90% female, 10% male pre-pandemic. And now I'm
Hmm.
at about 70-30. So it's
Wow.
still predominantly female, but I saw so many more men opening themselves up to say, maybe yoga is for me. Maybe I am willing to try meditation. So that was really encouraging. And it's encouraging that a lot of them have stuck with it, even though the world is quote unquote somewhat back to normal and most people are back to working. A lot of them have
Hmm.
stuck with the routines that they set for themselves during the pandemic. So 2020 was this huge year of growth. It was so busy for me. I didn't really get the opportunity to process what was happening. And then 2021, I had a bit of a burnout and I crashed
Hmm.
real hard because it was just so exciting for me in 2020. Like all of a sudden, all my hard work was paying off. I was getting recognized. I was, growing. I was really happy. It felt really good to be of service to people in a time of
Hmm.
need. I felt like I was of use. It felt like I was all this anxious energy that I had around the pandemic. It felt like I had a way to channel it in a productive
Yep.
manner. So I was able to kind of coast through that first year feeling pretty good. And then 2021, my nervous system couldn't really take it anymore. And it became a
Hmm.
lot harder to maintain the pace I had set for myself. But I just kept pushing because I push myself a lot. So I just kept trying to, go. And then it was not good. So 2022, I stepped back quite a bit. I took a year to like work a lot less to kind of process the pandemic. And now I'm back to feeling really good and really motivated. But it was a roller coaster experience. I'm thankful that I started in 2014. I was already well prepared and well set up. I know this was a hard learning curve for a lot of teachers and, wellness professionals who had to all of a sudden pivot their entire business model and figure out how to go online. I'm thankful I didn't have to go through that. But I had my own kind of challenges that came along with that.
Indeed. So what do you do when you're not teaching or doing yoga?
So one of the things that I really started doing for myself is horseback riding. I bought a horse and that's kind of my life now. I just kind of became an equestrian. It felt, I don't know if you can relate to this, but it's like when you have something that you love and you turn it into your career, you muddle the water a little bit. I really like having something that I love that is not at all tied to my income, to my job, to my career, to my personal presence, professional presence. I like having something that's just mine and that serves no other purpose other than being fun, bringing me joy, making me happy. That's been really, really, really helpful for me. So that's probably the biggest one. And that was my greatest takeaway from the pandemic is I can't have it all be work. I need something else. I need something personal and private that's just for me.
It's interesting, Kassandra, you say that, and I feel like so many of my clients and so many of my friends and so many people I know had similar experiences during the pandemic of, when you work for yourself, if you're an entrepreneur, it's, especially if you're high functioning or type A or all the things, it's hard to stop. When I wasn't socializing much during the pandemic, some people were working less. I was definitely not working less. I was definitely working more. And I think that a lot of people went through the experience of like, now we're sort of opened up again. And with my clients, I would say, what do you want to take? What is the new thing from the pandemic? Like we're going to choose the gems from that experience. And what you were sharing about the men, the 30%, from 10 to 30 increase is that those folks decided to hold on to that gem of yoga, 10-minute yoga in the morning or whatever it is they were doing with you, bringing it into the rest of their life. And I think that balance is something that can be challenging to create.
I've certainly struggled with it. I feel like I'm in a better place now because I've done the self-employment thing for long enough that I've been able to somewhat find a groove, but the pandemic really blew that out of the water in a way. It's challenging because like you said, some people, I'll speak for myself, are more type A, and I have a bit of like a workhorse mentality where I'll literally just keep going and can have some issues around guilt for taking time off or relaxing. But I think a lot of it, I remember during the pandemic, seeing a lot of messaging just from the culture itself to be like, use your time wisely, be productive with this time. Now's the time to start a side hustle, now's the time to like do what you've always wanted. So it's like, well, on one hand, we're going through a global trauma and everyone's scared and we're freaking out. And on the other hand, we're supposed to like capitalize on this in some way. And it's difficult and it's a lot. I've had to really try to limit my exposure in a lot of ways to social media because I'm so sensitive to that. And I've had to retrain myself around what do I want my work week to look like, what's realistic and what's sustainable. And again, that's where my elder self work has been really helpful. It's helpful to think of yourself, as a 90-year-old looking back on me right now, what would I want from me? Does the 9-year-old me wish I had worked harder? I don't know. Probably not. I feel like I'm working hard enough. I feel like I've done a good amount already, but I can lose sight of that very easily.
I had another question I wanted to ask you because you have a lot of free content online. You have over 700 free yoga videos of some kind online. Why is that important to you?
A lot of people over the years have told me, you're giving away too much. Don't do it. Put that behind a paywall, like funnel them behind a paywall. And I never started YouTube because I thought it would earn income. I didn't know it could. But even once I started realizing like, oh, okay, there's an opportunity here. What I love most about YouTube, it feels like a really good exchange for me. It feels like a great act of service. And I really, really, really love the fact that someone can choose to practice with me every day for the rest of their lives, and they never have to give me a single dollar.
Yep.
And yet I will still be able to make a wonderful income. You can't ask for a better setup, I feel really ethically quite good about it. I think that's what it comes down to, is like, I do think I'm someone of integrity, and this is a way that I'm able to feel good about the income that I make, because I know no one ever has to directly give me a single dollar to be able to benefit from the work that I do. So it just feels like a good exchange. There's been a lot of talk around like accessibility in the yoga space in the past few years, and inclusivity, which is like overdue and really warranted. One part about accessibility I think we often leave out. It's not just about making the classes and the poses accessible for different people and different bodies. It's about making the practice of yoga more accessible for the general population. I'm in a big city. I'm used to having a studio every couple of blocks. There are many studios where I live. It's common. But when I started teaching on YouTube, the first few comments that I would get emails from people who say, the closest yoga studio is 2 hours away. It's not possible for me to even make it to a studio. If you live in rural America or rural Canada, it's not as accessible as you think it is. So I think that's the part that people forget about, is not everyone has the same access to studios. And even if you do have a studio nearby, classes are about $20 at least each. And for some people, you also need to get a babysitter to cover you. There's an hour at the studio, but there's 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes after. It can be a big hurdle. So I liked that online helped to remove those barriers of entry, both by convenience. You don't have to leave your house. You can wear whatever you want. You don't have to worry about whether the people around you are looking at you. Do whatever you want, privacy of your own home. If your kids are crawling through your legs as you're doing it, whatever, it's fine, and it's free. You don't have to pay. So I do have a lot of like paid offerings as well, because the downside of YouTube, the only way I'm able to make income from that means that there are ads before and after the video. I guess that's a con, but overall, I feel really good about it. It inspires me to keep going. It gives me like a greater purpose to continue moving forward versus just, well, I have to pay my mortgage. Like it feels like a great motivator. I don't know, like I can really connect with people in a way, and I could really see the difference that it's making in their lives. It feels really good. So yeah, I'm all about the free content, but I've definitely had a ton of business coaches and people who are, they tell me I'm doing it wrong. I think I'm doing great. I think I'm doing okay. I'm going to keep doing it the way I want to do it,
Totally. I totally agree. I love it. And I really respect it, because it's for me, it's all about what is my actual motivation? What's my dharma? What's my purpose in life? And every decision I make is aligned with that. And that means putting out a crap ton of free content, because I really want mental wellness for everyone.
Exactly.
And I also have high ticket items and I have low ticket items, but the reality is everyone deserves tools. And a lot of people in other countries and can't even pay for things online, don't even have credit cards, don't have access to any of that. So there's something about, really, it evens the playing field to a degree, and I love it. All right, I have one more question for you. So what would you say personally has been like your own biggest boundary struggle, and how have you overcome it if you have?
Okay. I'm pretty bad. I love your book. My best friend and I read your book on Boundary Boss, because we're both like notorious people pleasers, and we struggle a lot with that. So I told her right away, I was like, I'm going to be interviewed by Terri Cole. I don't want to tell her how bad at boundaries I really am. It's people pleasing for me. People pleasing is really where I struggle. I would love, love, love to be able to go about life making absolutely every single person happy. You know, it's even in very small things that I'll notice with my husband, for example. What do you want for dinner? Or what do you want to watch? What do you
Mm-hmm.
want for dinner? What do you want to watch? Even if I have
Right.
something, I'd rather be hurt or not get what I want if it means letting someone else be okay.
Mm.
I'm working on it. I really am
Mm-hmm.
trying to work on it. I'm able to recognize it a lot more. Before, I didn't even have the verbiage. I didn't even know I was a people pleaser. You know, like this is a kind of
Right.
new diagnostic for me. I just thought I'm just being nice. I'm being polite. I'm
Yep.
being the way I was raised to be. You know,
Yep.
I'm being a good girl. Like,
Yeah,
this is what
indeed.
I want. It took a long time and a lot of like harsh confrontations and realities to be like, oh, I'm being good to others at the detriment of myself. And I don't want to go that way. So I'm not
Mm-mm.
amazing at it. I'm trying to get better. I'm now better at saying no. What I find difficult is being honest about why I'm saying no. So I'm a lot better at like, I feel like I have to justify my no or come up with an
Mm-hmm.
adequate
Yep.
excuse. You know, I
Yep.
feel like I have to validate it. I don't know. I'll reread your book, I think.
Well, listen, Kassandra, listen, that's a beautiful answer. People pleasing is something that so many of us suffer from. So it's obviously not just you, but the most important thing is that you're on your path. You know how you want it to be. And slowly but surely, we make those changes and they'll happen because once you're aware and you raise that awareness, which you've already done if you've read my book,
Mhm.
like we can't go back to sleep. Like, you know it. Like, you have to deal with it. And so slowly but surely, and it gets better the more you do it, you know? So, Kassandra, tell everybody where they can find you.
So very easily, just yogawithkassandra.com, or you can just type it into Google and you'll be able to find all of my links. It's Kassandra with a K. Same on YouTube. You can just search Yoga with Kassandra. I've got, I don't know, about 1 million videos, it seems by now. Yogawithkassandra.com is the perfect hub for that.
Well, great. Thank you so much for what you're doing, for what you're putting out in the world. I super duper appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was great to chat.